Good morning, and welcome to the sanctuary of the Vancouver Unitarians. My name is Lorene Stokes, and I am here this morning as a member of the worship services team. We meet on the traditional, unceded, and ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and we are committed to conciliation, including actions grounded in our shared values, such as our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. This morning, our regular minister, Sean Gauthier, is away on sabbatical, and so our service this morning is being led by our intern minister, Janet Pivnick. It is our all-ages service, so we are delighted to have children of all ages here with us in the sanctuary for the full service. And just as a general reminder, if anybody needs it, there are some carpets with some books, some toys, and other things that you can hang out up at the front. If you are new or you are visiting us here today, or if you've been here for a really long time, we do have our lunch, and I would invite you to join us over in Hewitt Hall after the service. I'd like to invite John to come forward with our life of the congregation.
My name is John O'Millan, and I'm proud to be a member of your Board of Trustees. We raised $3,100 in a special collection for the Partner Church service last week, and the Partner Church team wants to thank you all for your generosity. Yesterday morning in the Fireside Room, we hosted a Metro Vancouver UU group meeting with 14 attendees from the 5 Unitarian congregations, including several members of the new, what's called Title Pool. It's a group of student, intern, and retired ministers that discussed offering their services. In case you weren't aware, we are the only Unitarian congregation in Metro Vancouver that has a full-time minister. So the other congregations were definitely interested in varying degrees in using Title Pool. We also discussed several internal and external issues among the congregations. These meetings are held several times per year and are facilitated among the congregations, with Beacon Unitarian coming up next. And these meetings are usually held either here or on in the North Shore location. I also attended the previous one last October at the North Shore, finding both meetings to be very interesting and educational. As mentioned, today is Exploration Sunday. There are going to be 3 events occurring after the service. Details about them will be provided during the service. Also note that daylight savings time starts next Sunday. So keep that in mind. Also on Sunday, March 15th, from 12:30 to 2 p.m. in the Fireside Room, there will be a forum to introduce apartheid-free communities. The last item I'll discuss is that on Friday, March 20th, from 11 a.m. to noon, in the sanctuary here, there will be a celebration of life of Catherine Roback.
Now let's take some time to widen our welcome and turn to each other and say good morning. When it's time to come back, Elliot's going to start playing our first hymn, and you will see the lyrics on the screen.
We start this morning with words from that most wise of bears, Winnie the Pooh. "Say, Pooh, why aren't you busy?" I said. "Because it's a nice day," said Pooh. "Yes, but..." "Why ruin it?" he said. "But you could be doing something important," I said. "I am," said Pooh. "Oh? Doing what?" "Listening," he said. "Listening to what?" "To the birds and that squirrel over there." "What are they saying?" I asked. "That it's a nice day," said Pooh. "But you know that already," I said. "Yes, but it's always good to hear that somebody else thinks so too," he replied. Nothing better to do on a nice day than hang out and listen to the birds, especially in the company of someone else who thinks that's the best way to spend a nice day. No need to be busy, just soak in the world. A very wise bear indeed. The theme that we're exploring this month is seeking wisdom. In today's All Ages service, we're going to talk a lot about wisdom, what it is, where it comes from, and we're going to hear the stories of two wise men who have the same name and come from two different faith traditions. I'd like to invite up Lorene to light our chalice. Together, we light this chalice. Together, we see its light. With kindness and in deep bonds of community, with love for the human family in all of its variety, with reverence before the world and its teeming web of life, may we care for our earthly home and for each other, with courage, with love, and with justice. So I'd like to invite up those of you who are, we just need to, oh, there we go. Those of you who are young in age and young at heart to come up to hear a story. I always have this fear when I invite up people who are young at heart that the whole congregation's going to come up. Be very crowded up here. Wow. Wonderful to see you all. Hello there. So our story today is, can you find a spot? You want to come here? We can make room for you.
There should be room for everybody.
Absolutely.
At least everyone who wants.
Can you
there be some room for them.
You got it. So our story today is very special. It's for adults and kids, and particularly special because it was written by a Unitarian minister. And I'm sure a lot of you know it. It's called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten.
Maybe.
Yeah. All I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sandpit at Sunday school. So there's that word wisdom. What do you guys think wisdom means? Yeah, Rowan.
Like knowledge, like important knowledge.
Okay, important
That
knowledge.
doesn't necessarily need to be very serious knowledge.
Important knowledge that doesn't need to be serious.
Knowledge that just necessarily needs to be important.
Okay, so important is the big part of it.
Knowledge, how to interact with different types of knowledge.
How we,
Knowledge, but a bigger picture of it.
okay, how we interact with knowledge. Street smarts, okay. So, yeah, so it's kind of, you guys all have talked about knowledge, but it's not just knowledge. It's what we do with that knowledge and how we use it to live a good life. About that wisdom. And there's no pictures for this story, but I've got a way for you all to be involved with it. So I'm going to read out a whole bunch of things that Robert Fulghum thinks are very important pieces of wisdom. And if you think they're important pieces of wisdom, put up your hand. You too. Okay, so these are the things I learned. Share everything. Play fair. Put things back where you found them. Clean. Don't take things that aren't yours. Have a on and off again mic. Say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Wash your hands. Milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and think some and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work every day some. I like that one. Take a nap every afternoon. Okay, there were a few up here. There were a lot more out there. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Be aware of wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup. The roots go down and the plant goes up, and nobody really knows how or why, but we're all like that. And then remember the Dick and Jane books. So these were books that taught people how to read a long time ago. So I don't think most of the people up here would know Dick and Jane books. You do? Okay. Remember the first word you learned, the biggest word of all, look. Everything you need to know is in there somewhere. Think what a better world it would be if we all had cookies and milk about 3 o'clock every afternoon, and then lay down with our blankies for a nap. Or if all governments had as a basic policy to always put things back where they found them. Thought that might be a lot of hands. True. No matter how old you are, when you go out into the world, it's best to hold hands and stick together. So you know what's really cool? At the end of our service every week, we all hold hands and stick together. And today you're all going to do that with us. So for right now, if you want to either go back to your seats or go over to the playground, and there's some books and paper and crayons, and we'll chat more later. Later.
Sorry, just a sec. Okay.
Today is the day for tech issues, huh? There we go. Great.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Hello, my name is Audrey Cook, and our candle lighter is Roger Brandt. We take time in every service to share our celebrations, our sorrows, our joys, and our concerns by lighting candles together. As each candle is lit, please take a moment to hold in each request in your heart and join us at the end by saying, "We light these candles together." There is so much turmoil in the world today. Before turning to the personal joys and sorrows of this beloved community today, we light a candle for the people of Iran. We hold them in our heart and pray that everyone on all sides of this conflict will be safe and that peace will soon come to the area. Anne requests a candle for Rob, who has lived with type 1 diabetes for 52 years and has now just learned that he has coped with congestive heart failure. Lord. Please join me in saying, "We light these candles together."
To help us transition to a more reflective place and a time for silent meditation, for prayer or contemplation, I have these words from Richard Wagamese. The beginning of wisdom is the same as its attainment, wonder. The truest statement in the world is, you never know. There is always something to evoke wonder, to wonder about, because this world, this life, this universe, this reality is far more than just the sum of its parts. Even the slightest detail contains much more. The overwhelming awe and wonder we feel teach us much more than we can ever glean or come to know of things. In the presence of that wonder, the head has no answers, and the heart has no questions.
last summer, I went on a spiritual pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is kind of like a wisdom journey. On a pilgrimage, we travel to places that speak to our spirit, to learn what those places are saying to us, and to listen to ourselves and how we are responding. When I returned home, I realized that I both started my trip and ended my trip learning about a man named Francis. They were both wise leaders in two different religions. Many people go to visit the places where they lived to honor them and learn from their lives. So today we'll be sharing words and music and photos to learn from the lives of St. Francis of Assisi and Francis David. St. Francis was born, at that time he wasn't a saint, in 1182 in a small town called Assisi in Italy. His father sold fine clothing like silks and was quite wealthy. When Francis was a teenager, his father wanted him to enter into the family business. But Francis liked to party and to hang out with his friends. That was in the 1100s. Things were the same today. There were many arguments between Francis and his father. Francis dreamed of being a great knight. Although his father wanted him to work selling clothing, he thought that being a knight would bring glory to the family, so he supported Francis's dream. Thanks to his father's wealth, Francis was able to buy all of the gear needed to go into battle: a sword, an armor, and a horse. In 1202, at the age of 20, he joined the army in Assisi to fight the neighboring town of Perugia. He was captured in battle and spent a year in prison. He suffered there, and when his father paid the ransom to get him out, Francis was quite ill for several months. His imprisonment, seeing the suffering of his fellow prisoners, and his illness got him rethinking his life. Francis enlisted to fight in another battle, but on the way there, he had a dream which gave him the message to go home and follow a different path. At that point, he wasn't quite clear what that path would be. But Francis was raised as a Catholic, and so he did what he knew to do. He prayed. In 1205, praying in San Damiano Church, in front of the cross of San Damiano, he saw Jesus on the cross come to life and speak to him, saying, "Go repair my house, which, as you see, is falling down in ruins all around you." Francis took goods from his father's store and sold them, and sold his father's horse in order to raise money to rebuild the church. He moved into San Damiano Church and began to rebuild it. Well, as you can imagine, this didn't make his father very happy. The following year, he dragged Francis in front of the Bishop of Assisi and demanded that Francis return his property. In a famous story, Francis took off all of his fine clothes that he was wearing and put them at his father's feet. In that moment, he gave up his life of wealth to live a life of poverty, prayer, and service. He split from his father to follow God as his only father. From then on, he wore simple clothes and lived a simple life and worked with the poor as he continued to build other churches in the area. He was ridiculed for choosing this life by many around him. But some people saw his strong faith and his good work and his humble life, and they began to follow him. In 1209, he had 12 followers. He wrote a new rule for living as a Christian. Now, nobody knows exactly what that rule said, but it was based on the Bible and focused on a life of simplicity and humility and living in the footsteps of Jesus. He wanted to get the Pope's approval to start a new order based on this rule. So he traveled the 175 kilometers to Rome to see the Pope. Now, if you can imagine, this poor man, dressed in simple clothes with 12 followers, sought the Pope's approval to start a new order. But he received it. He began the Friars Minor, which later became the Franciscan order. This new order moved into a small chapel known as Porciuncula. They now set to build the church, not just the physical church, but to spread the Catholic faith according to the Franciscan rule. His followers grew from 12 to 5,000, and they spread out from Assisi throughout the region of Umbria, where Assisi is located, throughout Italy, and then Europe. Now there are Franciscan orders around the world. In 1225, suffering from illnesses and having lost most of his sight, he returned to live in San Damiano for 3 months. It was there that he wrote the Canticle of the Creatures, which we'll hear more about in a few minutes. Knowing that his life was coming to an end, he asked his fellow Franciscans to take him back to Porciuncula, where he had started the Friars Minor. There he died in 1226. He was 44 years old. 2 years later, in 1228, he became a saint. Saint Francis is the patron saint of animals, and you will often see images of him with birds landing on his arms and animals all around him. This is because he believed that God's goodness, or what we might call the spirit of life, was in every living thing. He thought that all of nature, plants, animals, the sun, the moon, were our sisters and brothers. And he believed that we should love and care for all of creation. This year marks 800 years since Francis's death, and the current Pope, Pope Leo, has named this the year of St. Francis. Many Catholics and non-Catholics make pilgrimages to Assisi to be in the place where he lived his life. And that little town, beautiful and ancient as it is, vibrates with the life and teachings of St. Francis. People love him and honor him. His belief in God and Jesus may not be what many Unitarians in North America believe, but there's much that we can learn from his life. So I'm going to do this sort of popcorn style. What wisdom do you hear in his story? If you want to shout it out, and I'll repeat it into the mic. Love. Service to others. Respect for the animals. Simplicity. I heard something else over here. Oneness of everything. Okay, a lot of good lessons and kind of a lot of Unitarian lessons. So St. Francis wrote 2 famous prayers, Prayer for Peace and Canticle of the Creatures. You know, sometimes you have a vision when you're putting together a service, and then you collaborate with other people, and it becomes way bigger and better than you ever thought it could be. Brian Jick translated the original 13th century text for Canticle of the Creatures and set it to music that is in keeping with the song style of that day. And he'll be singing it in a minute. While he's singing, you'll be seeing slides from Assisi, which include the town of Assisi, St. Francis Basilica, which started being built in 1228, the year that Francis was made a saint, Eremo del Carceri, and I apologize for anyone who speaks Italian if I totally butchered that. It's the place in the hills where St. Francis would go to pray in a cave. San Damiano Church and the San Damiano Cross, which I've spoken about, and Porciuncula, the small chapel where St. Francis founded the Franciscan order and where he died in 1226. And in order to preserve this tiny chapel, a basilica has been built around it, so this little chapel actually sits within another building. I'm going to turn it over to Brian to sing a song. Thank you.
So I'm going to get a few helpers. So the Canticle of the Creatures was... Can everybody hear me okay? All right, there we go. The Canticle of the Creatures was written by St. Francis in his local Umbrian Italian dialect. And this really is the earliest surviving poem in the Italian vernacular rather than in Latin. And it was written that way in the local dialect to be sung communally, indoors, outdoors, in the streets and markets and hills of Assisi. And so you know what I'm going to ask you to do. So you didn't know you'd be singing in medieval Umbrian today? but we'll have some words up there, and you'll hear the refrain a bunch of times, and so if you hear it, all you need is one note. So you can sing the drone, and we'll sing the tune. You'll get the idea quickly, and feel free to sing along. Omnipotent Altissimum, laudato per omne creatur. Omnipotent Altissimum, laudate per omne creatur. And to you, O brother sun, who spreads your light, who brings the day, beauty true to you, the one of beauty true. Now see what you've made. Omnipotent Altissimum, laudato per omne creatur. Omnipotent Altissimum, laudato per omne creatur.
And to you, O sister moon, and all the stars that guide your way, heaven's beacon, precious boon, O heaven's beacon, now see what you made.
Omnipotent Altissimum, laudato per omne creatur. Omnipotent Altissimum, laudato per omne creatur. And to you, O Mother Earth, your flowers, fruits, your peace and shade, give yourself to give us birth. You give yourself, now see what you've made. Omnipotent Altissimum, laudato per omne creatur. Omnipotent Altissimum, laudato per omne creatur. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Brian, and your helpers. That was absolutely beautiful. Could imagine that we're in Assisi back a few centuries ago. It was gorgeous. And I know that Brian's written more verses to that song, and so hopefully in another service we can hear the full version. Around 1,500 kilometers from Assisi, and 300 years later, the founder of our own faith, Francis David, and that's an English version of his name. His name in Hungarian is David Ferenc. Gavin was helping me with that. David Ferenc. He lived in Transylvania, which was then part of the Eastern Hungarian kingdom. To understand Francis David's story, we need to move away from Transylvania to Germany. A few years before David was born, there was a big shakeup going on in the church in Europe, which at that time was the Catholic Church. Martin Luther in Germany published a document that had 95 ideas that he thought should be the basis for Christianity and were different from Catholic beliefs. He invited people to discuss and argue about these ideas, and this was the beginning of the Protestant Church. Catholics believed in the Trinity, that God is made up of three parts: the Father, the Son, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, which are joined together as one. And most Protestants believe that as well. And although Luther didn't disagree with the idea of the Trinity, one of his ideas was that Christians should understand their faith based on what's written in the Bible. A group of people said, well, the Trinity isn't mentioned in the Bible. So we're going to just believe in the one God of the Bible. These people were called anti-Trinitarians, against the Trinity, or Unitarians. And this is where the name of our faith came from, though this wasn't yet the Unitarian religion. So here's where Francis David comes in. Like St. Francis, Francis David grew up as a Catholic. He was from Transylvania, but he studied Catholic theology at the University of Wittenberg around 30 or 35 years after Luther published his 95 Ideas in that same city. David learned about the ideas of Protestantism, and this had a strong influence on him. David returned to Transylvania, to the town of Koleshvar, as a Catholic preacher. But, like us, he was on the path of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which caused him to question his faith. He became Protestant, first Lutheran, and then Calvinist. As a Calvinist, David became a preacher in the court of King John Sigismund. Now, during this time, many different religious ideas were being talked about in Europe. George Biandrata, who was anti-Trinitarian, moved from Italy to Transylvania in 1563 and became the king's doctor. So we have David, who believed in free choice in religion, and Biandrata, who was anti-Trinitarian, both serving in the king's court. Biandrata and David had many conversations about religion, and David became an anti-Trinitarian, believing in one undivided God. As the court preacher and an influential speaker, he convinced the king of his Unitarian beliefs, and King Sigismund became the first Unitarian ruler. Now, all of the different faiths in Transylvania, not surprisingly, were bickering with each other and criticizing each other's beliefs. So King Sigismund believed that there should be an open discussion of beliefs, and he wanted to end the fighting. So in 1568, in the town of Torda, he called together a meeting of the leaders of the different faith traditions. Over 10 days, he heard from all of the different leaders about their beliefs. Francis David preached that religion should be freely chosen and that preachers should be free to preach according to their own beliefs. After listening to all of the faith leaders, King Sigismund signed the Edict of Torda, which was the first ever law of religious tolerance. It made sure that the Catholic, Lutheran, Calvinist, and now Unitarian clergy all had official and equal status. With this law, Unitarianism became an official religion, and Francis David was the founder and first bishop. But this freedom didn't last long. King Sigismund died only 3 years later. The new king was Catholic and didn't hold the same views of tolerance of all religions. He did, however, agree to let the existing faiths in Transylvania continue to practice their religions with the beliefs that they held at that time. There couldn't, however, be any changes or developments in their belief. So they were stuck with it where it was, but they could still live out those beliefs. Not surprisingly, with what we know of David's past, he was constantly rethinking and innovating and changing beliefs. So he was pushing the boundaries of Unitarianism and going up against the king's ruling. Biandrata was concerned that by doing so, the Unitarian faith wouldn't be allowed to exist. He thought that the survival of the faith required Unitarians to live within the boundaries that the king had set out. So he turned David into the authorities. In 1579, David was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life imprisonment in the citadel in Deva. He died a few months later. The Edict of Torda and Francis David are key parts of our history. So I'm going to ask again, what wisdom do you get from David's life, or maybe Biandrata's or King Sigismund's? Self-sacrifice. I think I heard courage. Freedom in your beliefs. We don't need to think alike to love alike, a very famous Unitarian saying. Keep wondering. Yeah. Keep questioning, don't give up. Have an open mind. So again, these all sound like Unitarian beliefs that we hold today. So Francis David wrote a hymn that's in the Hungarian Unitarian hymnal, And just to take you back for a moment to my visit to Transylvania this past summer, a minister from Deva walked up the path to the Citadel with me, telling me stories about Unitarian history. And when we got to the memorial for Francis David, he sang me this song in Hungarian. And delightfully, Gavin Grandish also knows this song, and he's going to share it with us today. So while he's singing, you're also going to be seeing some slides of David's life, including a very famous painting of David making a case for the Edict of Torda, the church in Torda where the edict was signed, St. Michael's Church in Koleshvar, which was built as a Catholic church and is currently a Catholic church, but for 150 years was Unitarian. It was the center of the Unitarian faith in this area and was where Francis David preached. You'll see the current Unitarian church in Koleshvar and the stone that sits in the vestibule of the church. Now, the legend is that Francis David stood on the stone as he preached to the town, and he was so convincing and moving in his preaching that the whole town converted to Unitarianism. He set a rather high bar for preaching. And then you'll see several photos of the Citadel where David was imprisoned and where he later died. I'll hand it to Gavin. Thanks.
Adjunk hálát mindnyájan, hálás szívvel vidáman, a felettünk valónak, az egyetlen egy Istennek, aki egybe gyűjtött minket, hogy ünnepnapot szenteljünk, és szent igéjével éljünk. Édesatyánk Istenünk, áldott legy, hogy mi nekünk, magadat megjelentéd, szóltál nekünk szent igédben. Sabban, aki azt elénk be, a te áldott szent fiadban, ami kegyes megváltónkban.
Thank you so much. It's another beautiful song that takes us to the place of our history. So we've heard about a lot of different sources of wisdom today. We had Robert Fulghum and taking us back to kindergarten. We had Winnie the Pooh. We had a reading that Lorene read about a sense of wonder. And then two men, Francis David and St. Francis of Assisi. So one more popcorn style for you. Where do you find wisdom? Who or what do you turn to when you're seeking wisdom? Your kids. I think one of them's sitting beside you. Unitarian ministers. Nature? What's there? Sorry. Unitarian sources. Friends. Yeah. The environment. I heard some other still small voice. Literature. Okay, seeing the big picture. CBC radio. Sometimes, sorry, I missed that. CBC radio sometimes. So many sources of wisdom, and we'll be exploring different sources over the course of the next month. And now I'd like to invite Lorene up to take our offering.
Our community is entirely self-supporting, and there is a lot that goes into the day-to-day operations of our congregation. We depend on each other to support the work and life of this community. We give gifts of ourselves, including our talents, our time, our creativity, and as we are able, we give money through our offering. We also use our offering to support good work out in the community through the Outreach Opportunities Fund. A small portion of our offering today will go towards Out in School, and we will continue supporting Out in School until May. Donations can be made by text, and the ushers will now come forward as well to pass a basket. Please join with me in saying our affirmation of gratitude. We give from our hearts, grateful to share and receive. Hope blooms from kindness. Now rise as you are willing and able, and join me in singing hymn number 311, Let It Be a Dance.
So before we close, a reminder that we have a pizza lunch in Hewitt Hall after the service. And then at 12:30, we'll have 3 Exploration Sunday sessions. Louise Bunn will be leading a session on Paganism 101 in Lindsay Priestley. The Healthy Relations team will be leading a listening circle to share your thoughts on how the wisdom of elders or other sources might provide comfort during difficult times. Ariel Hunt-Bronwyn will lead active games. Meet her in the alcove. And it looks like the weather's going to be good enough to go outdoors, which is lovely. Next week, our focus will shift to wisdom from Gen Z. Madeline McPeck and Taylor Starkman will be joining me to lead that service. So our final words of wisdom today come from Shel Silverstein from a poem called The Voice. There's a voice inside of you that whispers all day long. I feel that this is right for me. I know that this is wrong. No teacher, preacher, parent, friend, or wise man can decide what's right for you. Just listen to the voice that speaks inside. So although we extinguish our chalice flame, may its light of inspiration and warmth of community be a beacon of wisdom for you, as I find the snuffer. And as we prepare to go out into the world, let us hold hands and stick together as we sing Carry the Flame.
Yeah, is the way it's going to come out. So make sure it's good.